right. And I believe we will be live in just a moment as everything starts getting connected. I see on the phone that we are slowly being connected to the YouTube, and I can see that our first set of commercials are probably coming in as well. So for those who are tuning in later after this, you are hearing the banter prior to. Yes. Oh, interesting. I have one of my other phones that's up too, so I gotta.
It's in the loop.
Yep. There we go. So now that should be much better audio. So I'll just wait for myself to come back in here. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Yeah, it's coming through pretty good. So welcome back to another live stream.
Welcome to the Tyru Studios Circle of Death and Family Fun Show, featuring your host, Sean Tyru Head.
That's right. Here I am. Okay, so we have a lot of things to talk about today, and of course, as always, we are welcoming any questions in the live chat. We have a couple themes for our topics today, but happy to break away to answer questions about shakuhachi. This, of course, is an educational channel to promote shakuhachi and shakuhachi learning. We do giveaways, we do a bunch of stuff. There's membership as well, and we will go over all of those things today in our quasi podcast, videocast, Dungeons and Dragons thing. So what do we have on doc for today?
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, I can put the script aside and we can just talk about that.
Let's do that next week.
Okay. I had a feeling you weren't going to go for that. So you just got back into town from an out-of-town performance trip, right?
Yes, that's right. We went to Cheetah.
Okay, and I guess you took the whole family, right?
Yeah, I took the two girls and the wife, and we went together.
Did you guys drive, or did you
we drove there. So Cheetah, Nagoya. So Cheetah's just about like a 30 minutes to an hour drive south of Nagoya, depending on which part of the prefecture you're in or the city that you're in. So from here, from our house, it's 2 hours, 15 minutes.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit about the show? Like, who were you performing for and the venue?
Oh, absolutely. So there's actually going to be a video coming out about this too. It's the daily life as a shakuhachi player in Japan series. I haven't been doing that for a while, so I thought I should bring it back and do one. So you'll get even more insight, and you'll get to see some stuff from it. But the concert was hosted by Cheetah's Cultural Center, and they have like an arts department where they have concerts and people rent out the halls and stuff. But this time they invited me to come out to give a performance, and so this happened. This contract was like a year and a half ago, so this has actually been a while that we've been waiting for this performance to happen as well. And so it was just basically for the people of Cheetah. And I decided originally we were actually going to work with the koto player and the shamisen player, but the koto player got sick, so we had to cancel those and stuff. And so just what we did instead is I just did a solo program.
Cool. And it was the venue? Was it a large venue or was sound system and all that?
Yeah, it's 1,000 people.
Wow.
And it was a gorgeous hall. Like whoever designed the acoustics for that place, they knew what they were doing.
Oh, that's great.
Good.
That's lovely. And so you've got you will have a video coming out for some of this performance.
Yes.
Do you have any idea what your timeline is?
Yeah. So this Friday, you'll have access to everybody. Members and non-members will have access to the kind of just the short version of it, which is about 12-minute video. Members who are on the Okuden level or higher will have the full concert that they can watch everything.
Wow. That sounds great. So I know you traditionally don't eat before a show.
Correct.
Right? So post-show, did you go out for dinner? Like, was there good food in Cheetah? Is there a reason to go to Cheetah?
And this was actually one of the things that I was talking about, like kind of jokingly with people. There's like, what is here? And everybody would say nothing. But there actually is a couple things that are there. They're really famous all across Japan. And the first one is Cheetah whiskey. And so, once they told me that, I remember, it's like, yeah, I actually do remember that. I went to Okwa, which is our supermarket that we get all our groceries from in Nara. And when I was there was this little tiny bottle of whiskey called Cheetah whiskey. And it was $25. And I was like, wow, $25 for like not even 100 milliliters of whiskey. This
Wow.
better be amazing. And it was. And so that was like, this is where they make that. Other thing that they're really famous for are a lot of things that are related with Nagoya. So they have different types of katsu, and they have this miso katsu, which is really, really good. But yeah, that was the big highlights food-wise.
Cool. So, and I gather that while you were there, you also met up with Makihara Sensei.
Yeah, Makihara Sensei. Yes, we did. I got to meet him. He came to my rehearsal. He wasn't able to come to the concert, but he came to my rehearsal time and listened to the pieces, gave some feedback. It was very, very helpful. And then we all went out to dinner. I took him and his student out for dinner, and we did a little izakaya, which is kind of like a how do you explain an izakaya? It's
Bar
like,
and grill?
Yeah, bar and grill, but you order everything in very small portions.
It's a bar and grill meets tapas.
Oh, yeah. That's a good way to put it.
But Japanese. Yeah.
Yes.
So, can you tell us a little bit about Makihara Sensei, like what school he's from and that his playing?
Yeah. So Makihara Sensei is not part of any like school necessarily. He's done things with Tozan. He's done things Kinko. He's done things like from the Watazumi tradition. His main thing is, besides being a really great performer, is he is a historian. And so he focuses on the history of shakuhachi and just Japanese history in general. And so we had a great time talking just about, I had so many questions and a lot of things being answered and be like, I had no idea that was the case. One of the things that he clarified for me is that Amaterasu is actually a man, not a woman.
Amaterasu?
Yes, the sun god, not sun goddess.
Interesting.
And that was changed after the war.
Really?
Yeah. So popular culture sees Amaterasu as a woman, but it's actually a man.
Well, so much for my degree in religion. All right. We have a question here
Sure.
on the live. What's the correct term for a shakuhachi mouthpiece that is just cut bamboo, not with an insert?
So it's still called an utaguchi, and it would just be one that doesn't have an insert. And so there probably isn't a term that was made up afterwards that clarifies that. But in this case, it would just be utaguchi. And the Kinko styles inserts, those are called the yama. It looks like it's called the yama style or the mountain style because it looks like a mountain. And then in the Tozan style, it's the crescent moon, so it's called the moon style. So that's what the difference is. But one with nothing, just utaguchi.
It's a good question. It's a good question to clarify.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the question.
All right. Since we were talking about performances, you and I had talked a little bit about this. Like when you travel, and since we're talking about utaguchi, which is sort of the most fragile part of the flute.
Yes.
We have to protect our instruments when we travel. So what do you recommend? And I know you do a lot of hiking. You also travel by car, by air, by train. Mm-hmm. So what do you recommend for protecting your flutes in those situations?
So the best thing is always have the cap on your shakuhachi. So this part here, right? Leather cap or something on top of it that's going to protect the utaguchi in case you do bump up to something, right? Then after that, bamboo is better in consistent weather, not in crazy changes, both humidity and temperature-wise. So having it in that plastic bag and a kimono sleeve will really help. And then on top of that, if it's in a backpack or in sort of some kind of case, then you shouldn't have anything to worry about.
I was really shocked last year for the festival here in Nara. We went on quite a long hike.
Oh, yes.
And I didn't want to bring my nice, expensive shakuhachi, so I brought a Nobicon that I felt was a sturdier flute.
Sure.
And then when after we had hiked all over hell and back, we got up to the very top, and Sean opens up his case and pulls out his gajillion-dollar performance flute that he's been dragging through the mountains for several hours. I was pretty stunned that, that you would take a flute of that value out hiking. But I guess you feel pretty safe about it?
Yeah, it's we're in the climate of Japan, right, where bamboo is growing all the time.
See, my fear is not the climate. My fear is gravity.
Oh yeah, of falling. Yeah. Well, the thing is, if I fall off the cliff, then the thing's coming with me anyways.
Fair enough.
Right?
I mean, if you die, the flute's probably not a primary concern.
No, not a concern there.
That was a great hike, by the way. If you ever get a chance to come to this part of Japan, Sean and our friend Jonan can show you all the ways to get your steps.
Oh yeah. How many steps did we have that day? I think
26,000 or
Yeah.
something like. It was a long day.
and it wasn't just like the distance as well. It was also the it was also the height as well.
I think it was. I mean, my phone counted it as 40 flights of stairs, and that's conservative. It was very steep and very up and down, but it was absolutely beautiful. If you have any sort of fantasies about, you know, walking the ground that was tread by Musashi or whatever,
Yeah.
Nara's the place to do that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of those routes that we took on that day too were trade routes. So there are places that people used very often, and even further back than that, they were being used in the Nara period. So there's a lot of really cool stuff in there that's people don't even realize.
Yeah, and if you decide at some point that you do want to do that, you can contact Sean, and he kind of can help facilitate a visit to this part of Japan. There's a whole host of different activities that you can kind of get figured out through Sean.
Yeah.
And if you're a student of Sean's, you can come and he can, make you feel bad about your playing in person, and it's awesome. An in-person lesson is very different than on Skype. I get nervous playing on Skype in front of him, and in person is like an order of magnitude more. But you also get a lot more out of it because he's right there and can correct things. So, yeah. All right. Do we have? I'm trying to see if we have anything else on the stream here. Looks like just a lot of friends checking in. Svenja and Robert.
Welcome in, everybody.
Yeah.
Nice. Craig is also here. Craig asked that first question. Good to see you. Craig has been pretty on top of things. He's been here for every single live stream so far, so appreciate you. Appreciate the consistency.
We should make a badge or something.
Oh, a badge. Yeah.
All right. So, in discussing the performance, you and I talked about this a little bit beforehand. Your standard show prep, like you've been performing for years, not just shakuhachi but other instruments. You have sort of a tradition what you do before a show. And I was wondering, if you were like a hockey player, right? You have like 3 good shows in a row. That's a streak. Don't change your socks. Same hakama. Is that how it works?
Not quite.
No superstitions?
No superstitions like that. The only thing that I mainly do is I do lots of stretching. There's a YouTube channel where there's a guy who is like extremely flexible. Like he can put his like elbow to the ground when he has like standing up straight. Like it's just unbelievably flexible. So I do a lot of those types of like intense stretches to try to like pull muscles so that they're actually gaining more flexibility. And I find that when I'm more stretched and I have more flexibility, I have a better sound, and I have also better control over the instrument. And so if anything, it's the night before and the day of that I do lots of stretching, at least 45 minutes.
How do you feel about I know some people like to go and like get a walk in or like walk around the city that they're performing in, and I've done that performing vocally, and I kind of mixed feelings. Like sometimes it was great, and then sometimes I just spent the whole time I was walking worrying about getting to the venue on time.
I don't do anything like that, but I do hiking prior to, but that doesn't have to be in the city. A lot of times I do that in where I'm at. And then I have, get a lot of like the blood flowing. I have a lot more energy when I hike. So that's
cool.
what I do.
And
I'll take the pieces out. I play a lot of my pieces outside too.
Right. Well, and you, when you perform, I know you have sheet music in front of you in some cases, but you have a lot of stuff memorized, right?
Most of the stuff is memorized. The sheet music there is just there as a buffer. So that way I'm not like thinking about, oh, what's the next line? I just say, oh, look over, there it is.
Yeah. Yeah, especially in the pieces that have sort of movements, first, second, third. It's easy to get to the end of second and go, wait, what? What?
Yeah, how does that thing start again?
Yeah.
What's my first note?
What's the first note? Yeah. All right. I think that's something we could spend an entire broadcast talking about show prep.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And everything that goes with it, the stage fright and the memorization and picking clothes and the whole thing. And that's something we could, if you're interested in something like that, let us know in the comments.
If you're interested and you have more specific questions about that, please use the live chat to ask your questions.
Yeah, we definitely could go off for an hour on that. And we actually do have another question here from Craig. Do you recommend occasionally using oil on a bamboo shakuhachi? And he's saying like walnut oil.
Also, by the way, before I answer this question, we have new mics, as you can see, and so I definitely want you guys to tell us, can you hear us better and more clearly than in previous ones, especially with my producer and in-house producer. Make sure that we can hear. Can you hear our voices clearly and well balanced? So, as to answer the question for oil, there are some oils that you can use. Black walnut oil is a great option for that, for hydrating the instrument. But what I would recommend more than anything is boiled linseed oil. But really, if you're in a fairly standard environment, like it's not an extremely dry location, it's not unbearably cold or unbearably hot, you really don't need those things. Actually, playing them is more than enough. If you have the hydration from you blowing into the flute and having all the humidity come in, the oils from your hands, that will keep the bamboo structurally sound.
Yeah, and with the boiled linseed oil, make sure that it is boiled linseed oil. If you put plain linseed oil on the wood, the effect will be the same. It just will take about 3 weeks to a month to dry. Boiled linseed oil will dry very quickly overnight, but the stuff that is unprocessed will take about a month to dry, and your flute will be sticky and gross. So don't go that route. And
the boiled linseed oil too, it seeps into the pores of the bamboo, and then when it oxidizes, it hardens. So it really protects the instrument.
It's actually boiled linseed oil if you have wooden tools of any sort. Boiled linseed oil is a must. It keeps the handles in great shape. The other thing that we were kind of planning on talking about today a little bit is the upcoming festival, Taibo Festival.
Taibo Festival. Yeah, so the Taibo Festival is what we actually started it last year. It was with myself and Nick Bando, and we did a week-long shakuhachi festival here in Nara, Japan. And this year we're going to be doing it again, but we're going to be doing it in Aomori. And so the reason why is when we came down to this area, we focused a lot on shugyo, hiking, playing with nature, performance, and of course my specialty of dokyoku. And then going into the north, we're going to be studying Kinpuryu, and that's going to happen next weekend.
That's playing with apples. Right?
That's right, playing with apples. Right, Aomori, playing with apples.
For those of you who aren't familiar, Aomori is quite famous for its apple production. And it's actually, Aomori's, I don't know, would you call it remote? It's not a part of Japan that people traditionally visit unless they're on their way to Sapporo.
Yeah, so Aomori is definitely not the place where people are like flocking to. They actually have a very hard time getting people to come out there. That's why they have like the JR pass for people to go to different parts of Japan, because they want them to go outside of Tokyo and Osaka and Kyoto to, spend money in those places. One of the things that's actually kind of bad is that Nara is even considered as one of the remote places, and people tend to only go to Nara City. They spend a day here and then they leave. But from being here that a day is not enough.
Yeah,
for Nara.
Doesn't scratch the surface of Nara.
Yeah, especially I at least this is my feeling of most foreigners when they come to Japan, is that they're really interested in the old part of it. They want to see old buildings, they want to see temples, they want to see calligraphy goods, swords and incense and all that stuff. That's all here in Nara. And that's what we have here. Now you can find specialty stores in Osaka and Kyoto that are way overpriced, but like the actual, like who are using the tea materials, they buy them from Nara. When you're buying things for calligraphy, you buy them from Nara. Like all this sort of stuff is coming from Nara.
Yeah, and it's also one of the most beautiful, just in terms of nature, one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. And I say that, I lived in Colorado, which everybody in America raves about how beautiful Colorado is. And it is, but this is, again, if you have any, fantasies of wandering about on the roads where the samurai lived, this is the place to do it. It's amazing.
All right, so here's what I'll do. We'll take both of our families. We'll do a double family vacation, and I'll take you to Mie, and you will see that there is a place more beautiful than Nara.
Okay.
Mie is breathtaking. I cannot get over it's like walking into a Kurosawa film.
Oh wow.
And everywhere you go. And there's this one particular place. This family has two. They own 3 houses there, and they use 2 of them for Airbnb stuff, and then one is through their own that they stay and live there. And it's a very remote community. It's a village of 30 people, And at this village, at the bottom of it, there is an alcove or a cove where you can go fishing, and it looks like a scene from Ran, or
wow.
like where like any of the Musashi films, like fighting on the beachfront. That's what it looks like, and so we can go there and play shakuhachi and have a great time.
That sounds great.
So we'll plan it.
This is one of the beauties of listening into this, because Sean's here, lives in this area, and can tell you what's available. I have a friend who lives on Maui in Hawaii, and you think that's the most beautiful place on earth, and he's like, no, I vacation in Tahiti. Right? Tahiti is better than Hawaii. I need to be convinced. I'm not convinced there's anywhere
it is very
prettier
beautiful.
than Nara.
It's very beautiful.
I'll let you try and prove that to me.
Yeah.
All right, so if you have any questions or anything else that you are curious about as we ramble along, please feel free to offer up your questions on the live.
Jeremy has some fighting words here. It seems. Says Oregon runs circles around Colorado.
Okay. My mom and my sister both live in Oregon, and I agree Oregon's beautiful. I just don't want to wear a raincoat every day.
Yeah, I mean
there you go.
Fair.
Shots fired.
It's fair. Look, when I was in university, I went to the Cleveland Institute of Music, and there's all of these mugs and cups and places which goes, "Cleveland is my Paris." And I was like, yeah, the only thing you guys have in common is weather. Like, it just sucks. Always.
Well, and I actually, Crater Lake, Oregon, it's quite beautiful. It's quite beautiful. It's just, it rains a lot, man.
It does rain a lot.
Yeah. So, all right. Since we've actually been talking a little bit about like your professional life.
Yes.
It's a topic that I get asked a lot, because I just recently received my bamboo name.
Yes.
And so I've had a lot of people who aren't in the shakuhachi world ask me, like, what is that about? So if you could talk a little bit about bamboo names and about not only the traditions of our lineage, but also like your method of choosing a bamboo name for a student.
Sure. So the bamboo name is, it's much more part of the guild system from samurai culture. And it's much similar, or very similar, and just like the same as if you have like a tea name or a calligraphy name. You can have multiple tea names, multiple calligraphy names from different schools, different teachers, different ranks, and so on and so forth. And really what it is one character of the name has to do with the school. And so, for example, the Tozan players, they all have the Zan at the end, the Yama, the mountain character at the end of their name. So it's something Zan for everybody. In our school, it's Ryu, dragon, right? So and that comes from Taniguchi Yoshinobu, whose name is Ryu-do, so the dragon cage or dragon child. And so everybody will have the Ryu and part of the name because it goes along that lineage and that tradition. Now, sometimes people can break out of that tradition and they'll have two unique characters of names of their own, especially if they're very much outside of that, like they really have a name in mind, or the teacher thinks that they're going on a different route, they can give them a different name. So there's no like set rules, but typically it's one character from yourself and then one character for the student. So for your characters, yours is Liu Mei, right? Liu is the dragon. Mei means to sing or to cry. And so, not that you cry every lesson when we have that. I mean, that
not
does
every lesson, like
half of them. But it has to do with the quality of your sound, which is very song-like, and we really sing on the shakuhachi, and so that character really has a strong way of expressing how you play and your personality type and so on and so forth. So that's how they're chosen.
Okay, and I think that there's some some that's not the right word. Some variance from school to school regarding when that happens. Some people say when you become a shihan. Some don't give them at all.
I think in Tozan you get the Zan character when you are like a Chuden or something like that, and then you actually get the full name by the time you're Jun Shihan, and then that pretty much stays the same throughout. So for us, we get you get your bamboo name as a Jun Shihan, and then you could have a name change at the Shihan level or the Dai Shihan level, but typically people keep their name throughout those levels unless they have a radical change in their playing or personalities from that point.
Yeah, I mean, I really like my name, the sort of singing dragon, or, it could also be translated as like loud, obnoxious dragon, right? Roaring dragon. And I just hope that, when the Shihan thing comes, for me, if we've been doing this work together, I hope you don't decide to change it, because I don't know what the character for Jackass is, but like, Jackass dragon.
It's actually it's the same character for Donkey. So you'd be the Donkey Dragon. We can make that happen. It's not a bad idea.
Or just, Ryubaka,
Yeah.
idiot dragon. So, we have some questions that were posted here on the, or tips rather, that were posted on the community
Sure.
tab.
I think we have one question
we do.
which is the names here from Jeremiah. You might want to grab that one first, and then we can go over to the tips.
Okay. He snuck it in right after I clicked off the page. All right. It says, looks like the Ryu character isn't the same as the typical character for Dragon. Could you talk about that?
Okay, so in Japanese characters, this is why I actually should have my calligraphy set ready. There are 3 different ways of writing the character for Dragon, and I'm sure there's a couple more. There's the normal like Tatsu character, which is a kind of a simplified version of it, and that's what you would see in most cases, like in writings. Then there's Ryu, as in like Ryu Teki, which that Ryu is like a more the traditional way of writing dragon. And then there is Takiyochi, and that character for dragon has the marks of a water on it. And so we use the classical version of it because it's more formal. And so a lot of times it has to do with formality or with words, like related to words and stuff like that, specific words.
And when you became Tairyu, did you get any, like, was there a conversation with Taniguchi about that, or did it just happen?
No, he chose that for me with because he had watched my YouTube channel and kind of got a sense of the personality that I like to be in front of the camera. I like to communicate with people. I'm very extroverted. I love spending time with my students and doing I host the Shakuhachi festival where I spend a week with you guys, right? So that's kind of like big presence, wanting to be around people and having a big influence on people's lives.
It's good. I mean, it's good that you didn't open up that scroll and it's like, and I pronounce you Daishihan Bob, or something like that, right? If you you didn't know it was coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's difficult.
Yeah.
All right. The community tab, the
Sure.
very first tip there, you mentioned to improve finger dexterity. Practice scale patterns slowly, then gradually increase your speed, which that's, I think, every woodwind, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can we talk a little bit about what scales you think are best for that?
So there's actually one, and we can actually even tie this back to the concert prep too, because I use this for my concert prep a lot. So I use this dexterity pattern. And so that one's just ro to tsu, right? And then what I'll do is I will do the next 2 intervals after that, tsu to re. And then so on and so forth. Then I go to skips. So I'll do ro to re. And so I'm just using the D pentatonic minor. I'm using that scale as my basis, and then from there I'm just using different sort of patterns within that, or different intervals within the scale to help build a comfort or a dexterity between, or become more dexterous between all the different notes.
Those skips that require 2 fingers to move in concert.
Yeah, if you want to feel stupid, that you do those, right?
That's a really important drill.
Especially you can even do this without your shakuhachi. Try moving like your left hand index finger and then your right hand
ring finger
at the same time, or something like that. That's what you get on some of these. So here's the right hand index, left hand ring. And then see how it got
it kind of fell apart a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
So So then you can work on that to get that, and then you find out if I lead with the ring finger and I have the other finger follow because that one's weaker, let the weaker follow because then it makes it a lot more confident. So you can figure out things like that. What are your tendencies by doing those kind of scale passages? So where you find yourself having dexterity problems when you play, if you do dexterity exercises like that, it will really help.
I think that's drills are something that a lot of times those of us who aren't in like a formal conservatory setting or whatever, we have a tendency, at least I do, I have a tendency to focus on repertoire and focus on learning technique through playing songs that technique is in, as opposed to just drilling. And I played drums, and so I have in my mind the idea of like sitting down and just doing rudiments for half an hour.
Paratiddle, tiddle, paratiddle, tiddle.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
But it feels different somehow on a woodwind for me. It's difficult for me to convince myself that I should sit down and do row, re, row, re, row, re.
Yeah, and it's like who wants to do that? When you're like, I have all this beautiful repertoire that I can play, and then I'm gonna sit here and just go da 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 da. It's like not really what you think of with shakuhachi, but it really is so helpful even for your honkyoku because you're gonna have lines that are faster in honkyoku music anyways. But yeah, that's why we have etudes as well.
Right.
Etudes are the musical dexterity exercises, or they're focusing on certain points and whatnot. But there's and you can be creative with this. You can come up with your own kind of dexterity exercises to help develop your skill set on shakuhachi.
Yeah, and I think where is it in our repertoire? There are finger dexterity exercises built into the level. Is that in Okuden?
Yeah, it's an Okuden because we do all the folk music. Folk music has lots of stuff like that. Especially, I call it the Tsumeri Hell piece, which is Kinkira Kin.
Kinkira Kin. I love that piece now. I hated it when I was learning it.
All right, so. So every other note's Tsumeri.
Yeah, and there's a fantastic version of that where you perform that with Big K.
Big K, Kyle. We should have Kyle on the live stream.
Yeah, we should. Kyle, although Kyle, that guy, he is dinner and a show, right? All by himself.
Oh yeah, you can leave Kyle in a room by himself for 4 hours with a camera and a mic and just let it run, and it's entertainment just constantly.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I would post that, but I got to give you another question before I do that. Since we're talking about practice habits, we've had some people in the studio. I don't want to name names. I'll tell on myself. I'm not allowed near a kitchen knife for a while. I was cutting up an apple for my little girl, and I tried to take the tip of my finger off. And the day before that, I cut my thumb trying to cut tomatoes.
Oh, yeah.
So the thumb is really a problem because, covering the back hole, and the Band-Aid really doesn't cover perfectly, and you get a little leakage. And I'm just trying to practice through it.
It's interesting that you have that too, because I actually have two of them myself. I had a splinter on my thumb here, and then I have this is actually from trying to peel potatoes. So I was peeling the potato. I was holding it. I guess I was holding it like this or something, and then it comes down, and I look at it. I'm like, wow, I'm missing flesh on my pinky.
Yeah,
and it hurts. That one hurts a lot. But
yeah, I'm not. I mean, I do all the cooking for my family, but I probably shouldn't be around sharp objects. And in that same vein, we've got some other people in the studio that are going through some things. Some people that just got orthodontic braces on, which changes your embouchure. Someone else who is experiencing some problems with like a split lip. We have a lot of people in the studio that experience wrist and hand pain, and things like that. So I was just wondering your approach to trying to, or like best practices for kind of trying to cope with the physical adversities you encounter, because you don't want to give up on your practice because you're injured, but what can you do to get around it? And if you are so injured that you can't practice, what can you do to try to keep the shakuhachi fresh in your mind?
I think that last point is the most important point, because in general, if there's something that's in the way that's going to prohibit you from actually being able to play and practice, then you really should take the break. Like if you have like a major split in your lip that needs to heal, blowing hot moist air over it to keep opening up the wound, and you don't want to do that, right? Let it heal and move on. things with like orthodontic stuff, I know how much that sucks, and it's just I say I know, but I've never had braces in my life, so that was very hypocritical. I'm very sorry, but I know that how much it sucks by how much people have told me it sucks, and that it really can change things. It's like, you know, you have. I remember people in college who are like, oh, they're flute majors, and then they have to get braces, and they get their braces taken off. They're like, I have to relearn. I've had to now relearn my instrument twice.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, you have to think of it as looking at the bright side of it and trying to find something that's really, you know, helpful about this experience that you're having. And so my friend, the way that she did it was she would say to herself, like, yeah, well, you know what? I had to relearn my instrument twice, but I'm going to be really good at helping people when they first start playing the instrument. I know what it's like to have to come at the flute from many different angles in order to learn how to play it. But let's say, all right, you know, the other things is like, yeah, those kind of things will suck, but you have to find the bright side. Now, what happens when you can't actually practice? And there's a couple things that you can do. One thing that I think is lacked a lot is just singing through the music. So if you have a hand injury, just singing through your music is so helpful. And you don't really understand how to make the music song-like or making it feel like the human voice until you actually give it a shot and sing it yourself. That doesn't mean you have to, like, you know, jump out there and be like Luciano Pavarotti and then make sound like fantastic, or like a Joan Sutherland, right? That's not what we're not looking for. But just going like, even at that previous piece, just going toodle 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 just something like that. Even just, it doesn't have to be so serious of a sound, but working it through like that and hitting the pitch and having some sort of musical backing, like you're trying to be a little bit more musical, goes a really long way. There's always resources for you to research about the pieces of music that you are playing, learn about the history, find new performances of it, and train this more than just, you know, blowing out and making sounds, right? Because you want what comes into the ear is also you're going to start to come out with as you start to play. So that you can use that opportunity to have a lot more inspiration in your playing too. There's also this YouTube channel called Taidu Shakuhachi that has like a bunch of videos on like educational stuff with shakuhachi, as well as music theory and some other entertainment stuff too. Might want to go check that out and watch a few of those videos.
Yeah, I haven't checked it out myself. I've heard that it's good.
Oh yeah,
I hear good things.
Me too. Yeah.
I think that there's a saying in the martial arts that sometimes the worst students become the best teachers later on. Because they had the adversity.
Yeah.
If you're someone who comes into any physical pursuit and you happen to be a prodigy and you're good at it right away, then you often can't really help someone who's struggling down the line.
Yeah.
So
I was actually a terrible student.
Well, so these bad moments where you're hurt or your braces or whatever, it all counts. It all counts towards the bank of practice that you're putting in.
Yeah.
So even if you're not playing at your best, your brain is still working on the shakuhachi problem.
Absolutely.
Even when you're sleeping. All right. We have a question from earlier on Discord from Ollie.
Sure. Let's hit Ollie's question up.
He's saying, if Japanese music notation is representing the fingering, not the actual pitch, then does that mean that the player can choose to play a piece differently by choosing a different instrument, i.e. 1.6 or 2.4, etc.?
Yeah, so absolutely, yes. So you can, of course, different flutes are going to have different types of expression. So, for example, if I take, let's do a little bit like more of a dramatic change here.
You don't throw your flutes on the ground, kids.
Hey, in the famous words of Jackie Chan, Chinese bamboo is very strong.
Very strong.
So if you start that, like, start that opening, right, of just hon shidabe. Right, and then we move right over to the 2.0, same exact thing. Like, I already want to move slower on those first two notes. I want to add more air in. So, like, almost instantaneously, I want to do things differently on that flute compared to the 1.6. So, yeah, you can play, theoretically, you can play all honkyoku pieces on any size flute that you want. But just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, Sean really frowns on me trying to play things on my 1.4.
Yeah, like you shouldn't play Tamuke on a 1.1. Okay.
It's a very somber piece.
Very somber piece.
It
and
needs some
sound-
bird song on the top. So Ollie also has a follow-up question.
Sure.
So also, there is the additional choice of playing a piece at the same pitch, but with a different instrument by transposing it in the Western sense, which would sound very different because of different MIDI notes.
Yes. So this is actually a traditional thing that in some schools they do play their pieces in different modes. So, for example, let's take that 2.0 back out, and let's take our example of Honshirabe again. So if we start open here, this would be the Honjoshi mode, right? Now if I can change that and put it into the Akebono mode. And I can continue going. Then I can also change it into the Kumoi mode. And you get these like radically different colors. So absolutely, you can change your, you can change the fingering or change the mode that you're playing a piece in to get a drastically different sound.
And on the channel, there's a good video that sort of explains a little bit about the modes that I just posted there. And is this similar in a way to the modes on Hichiriki? Sorry, not Hichiriki.
Hitoyogiri?
Yeah, Hitoyogiri.
Yes. So we have to remember that Hitoyogiri and Shakuhachi are extraordinarily linked together. And even like the way that the scales worked, they were basically lifted up and placed into the shakuhachi music. The Hitoyogiri used to be called the shakuhachi, and even this modal theory in music also comes from shomyo and gagaku. So all this music is related. So Chinese music theory is the prevalent theory in Japan up until like the 1500s, 1600s, and then when the Miyakobushi scale comes into prominence here in Japan, then things start to get a little bit different, and they start to not like work all as well in terms of having distinct modes. But the three modes that we use in our kind of modern approach of Japanese traditional music, Miyakobushi scale, what all of my videos are used. We use the Miyakobushi scale, and the mode examples that I'm playing right now, those work just fine. So you can play most of the music that you have that's in Honjoshi, you can move it to Kumoi or to Akebono.
And it's similar to transposing in Western notation, where you're just thinking, I'm transposing this 2 steps, or...
Yeah, exactly. So in the case of Honjoshi to Kumoi, you'd be going up a 4th, and then into Akebono, it'd be up a 5th.
Okay.
So it's going to be a lot easier to play pieces that are in Akebono and then playing them down a step. So going down to the Kumoi or into Honjoshi. But you will run into a problem where you start to get things that are outside the range of the instrument, like too low or too high. So you're going to have to move things around a little bit. But it's just a part of playing things in modes. It's what makes it, you start to shape and contour the melody. So you're not playing Hon Shirabe as much as you're playing Akebono Shirabe, right? But it's a different piece. But what I'm getting at is you have Hon Choshi, Hon Shirabe, and then you have Akebono Hon Shirabe. They are the same piece melodically and in relationship to the notes and everything, but the way that the sound will come out and the way the tone color and the way the flute reacts with those certain notes and whatever becomes a different piece.
Yeah, we talk about this stuff a lot, kind of at later on in the repertoire. In the early phases, if you're working through Shoden or Chuden, don't worry about this.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like, especially if you haven't done music theory at a conservatory level, or it's like, I know C major, okay, don't worry about this right now, because modes can get really confusing, and even for people who do like Gregorian chant, modes are very confusing.
Right. So, well, and I came to this from percussion and playing guitar.
So you're like, what is an A?
I'm like, no, that's this shape right here that I'm making with my hand. That's a G. So it's really tough for me. I want to take a little break from questions and talk about something that I kind of lost track of.
Sure.
And it's amazing. Not too many weeks ago, we were celebrating 20,000 subscribers.
Yes.
On this channel, and then I blinked and we had 25,000 subscribers.
Yes.
Today we're sitting at 34.9 thousand subscribers. So thanks to all of you who have joined us. Much. And get your friends. I want to see 35,
50,000. Yeah. 100,000. I would love to have a silver plaque. That'd be cool.
That'd be cool. And as far as we mentioned the Hita Yogiri, I didn't see anybody in the group today who's also doing Hita Yogiri, but if you're a Hita Yogiri player, you're welcome here.
Robert does.
Robert, that's right. Robert plays Hita Yogiri.
Yeah, so they're here hanging out as well.
So,
but he's also playing shakuhachi too. But just people who are just playing Hita Yogiri are more than welcome.
Yeah, represent. Come join us. We've got I don't know how many Hita Yogiri people have gone through the classes.
That's a good question. I think it's over 30 people.
That's to me, that is amazing for an instrument that was dead. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. 2 years ago, Hita Yogiri was a dead issue.
No, it's dead. There was nobody with any serious intent trying to play the Hita Yogiri. And there are people who are in northern Japan who are also kind of tinkering around with it a little bit, but they're really just tinkering, right? It's not like a serious academic approach to here we're gonna revitalize how this music is performed. And Nick and I are still learning so much about this music, and there's a lot of times where we get something and it's like, what does this mean? And we stare at it and we're just like, there's no, it doesn't make any sense. You'll have this place in music, in a piece, for example, and it will have a character next to the note, and the character is oru. Well, so in oru in our music would be something like this. Something like that, where you ended it there. But this oru is found in a tuning melody, and it's the second note of a tuning melody. So it's why would you introduce non-pitch material in a tuning section, especially right in the opening of it? So we know it can't just mean this. It doesn't mean this just because it means that in modern shakuhachi and Edo period shakuhachi doesn't mean that in Muromachi period shakuhachi that it means the same thing. So there's a lot of times, okay, well, what does fold mean? What could it possibly mean? So a lot of times we have to just take things, just put it on the back burner and say that's a problem for future Sean and future Nick.
It'll become apparent perhaps as you play the repertoire. And
there has been things like that. Even there was a recent update. Nick found a new way of interpreting one of the characters, and then we had some other score collections that started to showcase that this was in fact the case. And so there's a lot of things that happen like that even on a weekly basis for us. So it's, even though we're revitalizing this music that's been very much extinct for over 150 years, there are still things that we're discovering every single week that we're teaching our courses. And so and it helps when people sign up for these courses too, because what you're basically doing by signing up for the course is that you're sponsoring the research for it, because we are still in the research part of this, and we're on the second iteration of the beginner's course, the introduction course, and even in then we're like, oh, we have so much new information. How much do we give and what do we give? And then we realized, well, that beginner course needs to have an advanced model, because there's that much things that have actually popped up in our research that warrants to have an additional class on it.
We definitely should get Nick in here for a live stream.
Well, that's what Aomori is for.
Yeah, and that's, for those of you who aren't familiar with Japanese geography, Aomori is a long way away.
It is a long way.
It's far enough that when we go to the festival, Sean and I are both flying.
Yeah.
So it's quite, I think to drive would be 14 hours or 12 hours,
something like that. And even the train ride is really far. Actually, I think it's way longer than 14 hours for a drive.
It's I guess I'm thinking train.
Yeah, it's 14 hours by train, and if you go, it's like traveling by car from the bottom of California to the top of California, or even into Oregon, Washington regions.
Yeah.
And it's also Japanese speed, so you're not going over 80 kilometers an hour.
Right.
And I mean, everybody goes 100, 120 anyways, but it's not a straight line. You know, the whole entire road is curvy all the way up there. So you're really traveling double the distance just because of how many curves and swerves you have to do, because you have to go around a mountain every other mountain.
Well, and for those of you who don't know who Nick Bando, it's Hoko, right? That's his bamboo.
Yeah, one of his names.
Yeah, Nick Hoko Bando. If he's you know, close friend of our studio, and he is a scholar in this field, right?
Yes.
So if you could talk a little brief bio of Nick, and we can talk about that.
Sure,
just for a
absolutely.
Moment. He comes up every live
Yeah,
stream.
he comes up a lot, and so we should introduce him a little bit more. So Nick Bando is a really good friend of mine. We chat about shakuhachi stuff every single day. We run multiple programs together. Both our Shakuhachi Festival, he's been featured on a lot of my videos where we do music theory stuff and historical things. One of the big videos that we did as a collaboration together was The Mystery of the Komuso on Shogunat's page, which got 250,000 views. He is a Kinpuryu specialist and an old style shakuhachi player. He does specifically what would shakuhachi have sounded like in the 1700s, and that's what he does, and that's what he plays. So we're like the perfect pair, because I do the modern stuff. I do not just more of the modern stuff. I do the modern stuff. I do modern music, and then he does all the classical style of the same music that we basically cross over. So that's an interesting thing that we do together. And then also we do the Shakuhachi Festival, and so now we're on our second iteration.
And yeah, if you ever get a chance to take a lesson from Nick or just hang out with him in general, he's a really funny guy, but his sense of humor is just arid. Like, it is so dry.
It is very dry.
It's like the desert, and the joke goes in one ear, and you think for just a second, like, wait a minute, was he kidding? And his face he's so flat, he just is like, that was a joke.
Yeah. He's a very low energy person, which is the exact opposite of me. Like, we are probably like, if there was any like example of yin yang like matches, that would be us.
Yeah, right? My wife is actually concerned about you and I spending time together.
Oh, really?
We're both kind of high drive human beings, and she's afraid we're gonna like
get in trouble,
burn your house down or something by accident.
That's possible.
It is possible.
Remember when I was talking about how I want to knock down the building?
So yeah. Get out there with sledgehammers next week.
I have to call your wife and say, Linus lost a foot. You know?
Yeah, and actually hanging out with Nick is very peaceful. It's funny. It's fun. It's really fun, but he's a very calming influence.
Yeah, he calms me down.
He's a good guy. All right. I'm looking back here at the community tab again, and I hesitate with what time we have left. I hesitate to open this can of worms, but
I'll try to make it short.
Okay, you mentioned experimenting with different embouchure shapes to discover subtle changes that affect tone and dynamics. Now, in this case, I think of embouchure as being specifically the shape of your lips, but I assume you're also talking about tongue placement and on the internal side as well.
Oh, I actually just mean even just with the lips.
Okay.
Because, even how much tension that's... so if you think of embouchure more as like a camera aperture, and like how the lens opens and closes to allow different amounts of light in, we can do the same thing with our lips in terms of allowing certain amounts of air in or out, right? And this is what I call in one of my videos on the Taidu membership, which is called volume versus velocity. So how much volume, how much air are you using, and how fast is the air coming out, which is through the embouchure shape or the aperture shape. And I actually prefer the term aperture over embouchure, because embouchure is almost like this fixed and set shape that you have for the instrument, but our embouchure changes for every single note that we play. So there's that. Speaking of which, on the membership, we haven't done any advertisements this time. To be awful. So for our membership, if you hit that join button, which is right below the here, I think it's like right around here somewhere, and if you hit that join button, you'll have a bunch of options that pop up. There are hundreds of lessons available there, and at a variety of rankings. So go ahead and check out all the perks and what's offered in those individual packages. And we're also giving away another bamboo shakuhachi. and it's made by Yozan, and that will be given at the last Monday of November at 11 a.m. Japan Standard Time, and you'll be here for that giveaway, and you'll help me out with that as well. Yep. And so you get 1 ticket for the lowest level, 2 tickets for the second level, 5 for the third, and 10 for the fourth. If you've won in the past, you can't win again. I think that's all I have to say for that.
Cool. I was wondering if I was going to bring that up, but I wasn't sure if you had one of those flutes handy to show. So.
They're over there in the back. So.
Okay. All right. We've got some other stuff coming up.
Sure.
What is your next performance coming up? Do you have something on the docket?
Yes. So the next performance stuff is going to be in Aomori that we're going to do at the Shakuhachi Festival, and then I have a concert in Kyoto on the 3rd of November. So that's what's up on doc next.
And are those? I think those are available on your main website. The details, are they posted?
I don't think the Shakuhachi Festival is, because we're still keeping it quite in-house.
Sure.
But in the future, we're thinking about opening it up to the public, so people who are outside of my personal studio and Nick's personal studio will be able to join and hang out with us at the festival in the future.
Okay. All right. Last question.
Yes.
I don't know if it's the last question. It
Could be.
Just feels like it. I had one of my students ask me.
Sure.
And I said, I'll ask our teacher. He said, in your mind, what makes a good hankyoku performance, or a great hankyoku performance, as opposed to an average acceptable hankyoku? Like, what's the difference between okay and good?
So what makes good, first off, is I think we have to set what that is going to be, right? So we think of pitch, timbre, rhythm if it applies. Well, it does, but whether it be like, rhythmic in terms of like heartbeat rhythm or breath rhythm, and like tone variation and breath control and all that kind of stuff. So like the technical things, the actual things that are objectively the things that you can criticize. So if someone's pitch in terms of how the classical tuning or the modern tuning is done is done well, you have someone who has a really beautiful tone throughout the piece. The way that they phrase the notes makes sense. How they're breathing and how they're controlling their breath works, and the rhythm is all working, right? We would say in Japanese, maga umai, the space or the location or the itness is used well. So that would make it a great performance, or just like a good performance in general. But to make it outstanding is, what do you have as an individual to say through this piece? And being individual doesn't mean that it has to be bombastic. It doesn't mean that it has to be filled with all of the bells and whistles of different techniques. It doesn't mean that every other note has to have muraiki on it. It doesn't mean... Are you
sure?
I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure on that one. Wait, maybe I'm not. But at the end of the day, it has to say something a lot more about that individual person and their connection with the audience members who are listening. And I've had performances where, I've played for a group of people, and I'll give you an example of a version of like an outstanding performance versus a good performance. So I had a performance at a temple that was just kind of a very random event. They called me last minute, and I played the piece Daha, and it was okay, right? Everything was in tune. I didn't find it to be a very inspiring performance of it or anything like that. Then one of my students, Lucas, had come over to do an intensive. We were having dinner, but a bunch of sushi and sake, and then Lucas had said, well, why don't you play a piece for us? And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll play you Daha. And what had come out of that flute that day, even Lucas just looked at me and like, dude, what the F? Like, that's just like I've never heard you play that good,
right,
and that well. And there was one of those things that's like, it only lives in our memory as this fantastic piece or this fantastic performance that's never going to happen again. And I remember I was doing it as a part of like the Jinashi series, and I remember doing the Jinashi series video just a week after that, and it was nowhere near what it was. And so it's just one of those things that sometimes it's in the moment, and it's only 3 people that you're playing for, and it's just this outstanding thing because you have something that you really are sharing with that person. There's something really magical about that moment in time that creates the outstanding performance, because there's something more than you're playing than just notes on the page.
Yeah, it's I think it's real difficult for some of us who are Western musicians originally to understand the idea of, these pieces that they're not rhythmic in the sense that we're accustomed to.
Yes.
And so it's very difficult. And also I think we're kind of skewed by the fact that we're so used to listening to recorded music and comparing ourselves to that recording.
Yeah.
Which is all post-production, and it's been, a lot of times it's been auto-tuned and fixed up.
That's another thing, too, that I would just have people be very careful of when they're listening to their favorite shakuhachi recordings, whether it, no matter who it be, is that there is a lot of post-production stuff that happens in the recordings that include many, 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 many things. And things that now are just, they're recorded in high definition to so much of a detail that it's as if you were playing the instrument yourself. That was one of the reasons why with my CD, the Tairyu Honkyoku series, Tairyu Honkyoku 1 and Tairyu Honkyoku 2, I wanted to do everything analog. I wanted to do it old school, where everything isn't clean like this, and it's more like it's as if you were sitting in the same room as me, about 10, 15 feet away, and listening to me play, rather than having this, extremely like highly compressed, condensed sound that is, really popular on today's market.
Yeah, there's a quote from Teddy Roosevelt that comparison is the thief of joy. And we in the modern era, listening to such highly produced music, I think a lot of bedroom musicians feel very frustrated, and you kind of resort to buying equipment that can juice you up and make you sound better than you actually are. And it's unfortunate. That's one of the great things about the shakuhachi, is because ultimately it's best heard dry.
And even for my recording too, I don't use any like pitch correction or anything like that. It's as raw as you can get. It's literally analog, then digitized, put into Audacity, and then normalized, and then done. Like there's almost like no editing whatsoever, besides just getting some balancing things out.
Yeah, and then leaving out that the compression gates and whatnot are because that really hampers shakuhachi music.
Oh yeah, and I guess it's a good time to end because the camera just died. So right at 12 o'clock. So there you guys have it. The camera has decided that we are done.
Yeah, the camera's had enough of our crap.
So we will see you guys next week for another live stream.
Thank you for being here, and by all means, if you have any questions, feel free to post them up to us on the community tab or join us on Discord.